The sound of breaking glass shattered the evening calm, followed by a woman's desperate cry for help. What happened in those next 60 seconds would change the lives of everyone on Maple Street forever. If you've ever wondered whether ordinary people can become heroes when it matters most, this story will answer that question, and leave you breathless until the very end. Before we dive into this incredible true story, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of everyday heroes who remind us what courage really looks like. Michael Reeves never considered himself anything special. At 38, his life revolved around two things: his 8-year-old daughter Emma and the auto repair shop he'd built from nothing after his wife passed away 3 years ago. The small business kept food on the table and allowed him to pick Emma up from school most days, a routine he cherished despite the constant struggle to balance work and single parenthood. That Tuesday evening had been particularly exhausting. A transmission job had taken longer than expected, forcing Michael to call his neighbor Mrs. Patel to watch Emma for an extra hour. By the time he locked up the shop, his shoulders ached and his hands were stained with grease that never seemed to fully wash away no matter how hard he scrubbed. "Just need to grab some milk and Emma's favorite cereal," he muttered to himself, deciding to take the shortcut through the small commercial district rather than the longer route home. The streetlights had just flickered on, casting long shadows across the nearly empty sidewalks. Most businesses were closing, their owners pulling down security gates with metallic rattles that echoed between buildings. Michael was mentally reviewing Emma's homework schedule when he heard it, a woman's voice, tight with fear, coming from the narrow alley between the pharmacy and the laundromat. "Please, just take my purse and leave me alone." The tremor in her voice made Michael's steps falter. 3 figures had backed a woman against the brick wall, 2 men and a teenager, their postures predatory as they closed in around her. The tallest one, wearing a dark hoodie, laughed as he knocked her phone from her hand. "Maybe we don't want just the purse," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the evening air. Michael froze. Every instinct told him to keep walking, to get home to Emma. He wasn't a fighter, hadn't been in a physical altercation since 9th grade. He was just a mechanic, a dad who read bedtime stories and checked for monsters under the bed. What could he possibly do against 3 aggressors? But then he thought of Emma. What would he want someone to do if she were the one trapped in that alley someday? The woman's eyes met his across the distance, wide with fear, silently pleading. In that moment, something shifted inside Michael. Later, he would struggle to explain it to the police, to Emma, even to himself. It wasn't courage exactly, but something deeper, a sudden, absolute clarity that erased all hesitation. Without conscious thought, Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out his keys. With practiced fingers, he found the small metal whistle Emma's school had distributed to parents for emergencies. He'd kept it on his keychain out of habit, never expecting to use it. He raised it to his lips and blew. The piercing shriek cut through the evening air like a physical force. Michael didn't stop there. He began walking directly toward the alley, whistle still blaring, his free hand reaching for his phone. With deliberate movements, he turned on his flashlight app, the bright beam cutting through the growing darkness as he pointed it directly at the 3 figures. "Hey," he shouted between whistle blasts. "Everyone look here. Call 911. The effect was immediate. Heads turned from every direction. A couple exiting the restaurant across the street stopped mid-conversation. The pharmacy security guard stepped outside. Windows opened in the apartments above. But Michael didn't stop. Something had taken over, a protective instinct he never knew he possessed. He continued walking forward, whistle shrieking, light blazing, his voice growing louder. "I've got you all on camera. Police are on their way." The 3 harassers froze, suddenly caught in a spotlight with an audience they hadn't planned for. The youngest one broke first, backing away with his hands raised. "We were just talking, man. Chill." The tallest one, clearly the leader, hesitated, his face contorting with anger and uncertainty. For one terrible moment, Michael thought he might charge forward, but then more lights appeared as people from nearby businesses emerged, phones raised. "Everything okay over there?" called the pharmacy security guard, already moving in their direction. The street had transformed in seconds. What had been nearly empty was now filled with witnesses, all focused on the scene unfolding in the alley. The three harassers exchanged glances, then scattered in different directions, disappearing around corners and between buildings. The entire confrontation had lasted less than a minute. Michael's legs nearly buckled as the adrenaline that had propelled him forward suddenly drained away. The whistle fell from his lips, dangling from the keychain in his trembling hand. The woman remained pressed against the wall, her purse clutched to her chest, eyes wide with disbelief. She was younger than Michael had initially thought, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her work clothes suggested she'd just finished a shift somewhere nearby. "Are you hurt?" Michael asked, keeping a respectful distance. She shook her head, then swallowed hard. "They followed me from the bus stop. I thought." Her voice broke. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." She couldn't finish the sentence. By now, several people had gathered around them, offering water, a place to sit, assurances that police were on their way. The pharmacy security guard retrieved the woman's phone from where it had fallen, its screen now cracked but still functional. Her name was Alicia Torres, Michael learned. She worked as a nurse at the community clinic 6 blocks away and was heading home to her mother, who depended on her care. As they waited for the police, sitting on a bench outside the pharmacy, she studied Michael's face. "Why did you help me?" she asked quietly. Most people would have kept walking. Michael thought about Emma waiting at home, probably negotiating with Mrs. Patel for extra television time. He thought about the lessons he tried to teach her about doing what's right, even when it's difficult. "I have a daughter," he said simply. "I want her to grow up in a world where people look out for each other." The police arrived minutes later, taking statements and reviewing security footage from nearby businesses. One officer pulled Michael aside. "That was quick thinking with the whistle and light," he said. "Created a scene they couldn't control. But you took a serious risk approaching them directly." Michael nodded, the reality of what might have happened finally sinking in. "I didn't really think it through. I just couldn't walk away." By the time Michael finally made it home, Emma was already in pajamas, her face lighting up when he walked through the door. Mrs. Patel raised an eyebrow at his disheveled appearance but didn't ask questions, simply patting his arm before heading back to her apartment. That night, after tucking Emma in, Michael sat alone in his small living room, his hands still shaking slightly as he replayed the events in his mind. His phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. "This is Alicia from earlier. The police gave me your number. I just wanted to say thank you again. My mother says you're our guardian angel." Michael stared at the message, unsure how to respond. He didn't feel like an angel or a hero. He'd just done what he hoped anyone would do. 3 days later, Michael was working under a Subaru when his shop assistant called him to the front. A small crowd had gathered outside, familiar faces from the neighborhood, but also strangers, including Alicia and an older woman who must have been her mother. "What's going on?" Michael asked, wiping his hands on a shop rag. Alicia stepped forward. "After what happened, I posted about it online. Just to warn other women in the area to be careful." She gestured to the group. "But then people started sharing it, and, well, it turns out those same men had been harassing people all over the neighborhood for months. No one felt brave enough to stand up to them." The older woman, Alicia's mother, approached Michael with tears in her eyes. "My daughter is all I have," she said, her accent thick with emotion. "What you did?" Michael shook his head, embarrassed by the attention. "Anyone would have." "But they didn't," interrupted a man Michael recognized as the owner of the hardware store down the street. "That's the point. We all kept our heads down, minded our own business. You didn't." What Michael didn't know was that security camera footage from the pharmacy had captured the entire incident. Someone had posted it online, where it had quickly gone viral. Local news stations were already calling it the whistle heard around the neighborhood. The most surprising development came a week later, when community members approached Michael about starting a neighborhood watch program. The first meeting, held in the community center, drew over 60 people, many of whom had never spoken to each other despite living on the same streets for years. "I'm not qualified to lead something like this," Michael protested when they nominated him as coordinator. "You showed us what one person can do," replied Mrs. Patel, who had insisted on attending. "Sometimes that's all it takes to remind people of who they want to be." For Emma, her father's sudden local fame was both confusing and exciting. "Are you a superhero now, Dad?" she asked one evening as they walked home from the second neighborhood watch meeting. Michael laughed, swinging their joined hands between them. "Definitely not, kiddo. But you saved someone. That's what superheroes do." Michael stopped walking, kneeling down to meet his daughter's eyes. "Listen, Em. What I did wasn't special. I just didn't walk away when someone needed help. That's not being a hero. That's just being human." Emma considered this, her small face serious. "So anyone can do it?" "Absolutely. And that's the most important part of the story." 6 months later, crime rates in the neighborhood had dropped significantly. The 3 men who had harassed Alicia were eventually arrested for similar incidents in other areas. But the real change was less tangible. It was in the way neighbors now greeted each other by name, in the walking groups that formed to ensure no one traveled alone after dark, in the community garden that sprung up in a previously abandoned lot. As for Michael and Alicia, their connection grew slowly but steadily. She brought coffee to his shop occasionally, he fixed her car when it wouldn't start. Their first official date was chaperoned by both Emma and Alicia's mother, who had become fast friends despite, or perhaps because of, their 60-year age difference. 1 year after that evening in the alley, Michael stood on the same street corner, now transformed by community efforts into a small pocket park with benches and planters. A plaque had been installed, despite his embarrassed objections, commemorating what the neighborhood now called the whistle moment. "Still uncomfortable with all this attention?" Alicia asked, slipping her hand into his. Michael shrugged. "I still don't think I did anything special." "That's exactly why it was special," she replied. "You didn't think about it. You just acted." Emma, now 9, looked up from the book she was reading on a nearby bench. "Dad says anyone can be brave for 5 seconds. That's all it takes sometimes." Michael smiled at his daughter's simplification of the many conversations they'd had about that night. But she wasn't wrong. 5 seconds of courage had changed everything, not just for Alicia, but for an entire community that had forgotten how to look out for one another. As the sun set over their transformed neighborhood, Michael realized that the most powerful moments in life aren't always the grand gestures or planned heroics. Sometimes, they're just ordinary people making the decision not to look away when it would be easier to keep walking. If this story moved you, remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful reminders of the difference one person can make. Because in a world that sometimes feels divided and fearful, we need these stories of connection and courage more than ever. And perhaps the next time you find yourself at a crossroads between walking away or stepping forward, you'll remember Michael Reeves and his whistle, and find your own 5 seconds of courage when it matters most.